Chapter 6. Graham stared into the fire in her voluminous plaid flannel nightgown. "How was the party?" Olivia asked. "Not much of one. Shepard was the only one who showed up besides me." Olivia removed her coat and slumped into the opposite chair. "Did you have a nice time?" "Nah, Shepard and I were never really close. She made her excuses and I made mine and I came home." "I'm sorry, Grams." Grams glanced up from the fire. "It's okay. Attendance has been dwindling the past year, and I think we're all worried about retirement. What we would do, would we have any friends?" "Retirement is claiming them?" Graham's eyes slipped back to the fire. "Yep, they found their way." "You'll be sorry to see it end." "Yes, I will, but that doesn't mean it shouldn't." "Did you eat?" "I did. There's some cheesecake in the kitchen if you'd like a piece." "That's something I'd miss." "Why would you miss it?" Olivia turned her back to Graham's all-seeing eyes and made for the closet. "On the way home, I was thinking about Max and how different things are for him here. And that led to thinking about how different it would be for me if I went to his time." "Be careful." Grams made her way to the kitchen. Olivia went the other way around. "What?" A silly giggle bubbled out in spite of her attempts at control. Grams swung around quickly to face her. "He's cursed." Olivia felt the smile drop from her face. "I know that. I think it's only natural to think about it. I mean, who gets to meet someone who's traveled through time? Nobody. That's who. Except us. Yes. And that means we have a responsibility to help him break the curse and get him back to his own time. What if God allows him to stay here? What if he doesn't?" Grams wasn't asking a question. She pronounced a judgment. Olivia had seen this decided opinion behavior before. She was done thinking about it, and she had decided the way it was going to be, and she was usually right. Okay. It's still not wrong for me to imagine and think about things. Imagining and asking him about his time is one thing. Imagining yourself and his time with him, that's an entirely different thing, and you know it." She pointed her finger. "It's dreaming, and dreaming about things you can't have is dangerous." "Only if it can't come true." Grams placed a couple of Christmas-decorated paper plates on the counter. Olivia cut the cheesecake. Grams ran a K-cup of tea through the machine. She placed a hand on Olivia's shoulder. "Trust me, honey. If I was your age, I'd have the same questions. I haven't seen such a man in a very, very long time." She gave Olivia a wicked grin. They went back to the fire. Grams was right, of course. It was dangerous to think of going back there with him. Riding in an open carriage under the stars on a cool fall night. Dancing with him in a crimson dress. What would he think of the 2 new outfits she had commissioned? An authentic mantua in indigo with a pale apple green petticoat. Created by Ingram's, it cost a pretty penny, but she wanted to look the part for the Christmas open town. The deep chocolate brown riding habit was pure indulgence. She had no place to wear it yet, but she couldn't resist the color or the sale price. Perhaps they would dance at the Christmas open town. He could wear his real clothes, and she could wear her new mantua. Olivia pulled her brain, if not her heart, out of dangerous ground. Grams was right. He had to go back, and she had to stay here. "Have you figured out what we need to do?" "I think he needs to pray for forgiveness if he hasn't already, and then he needs to demonstrate he's learned the lesson." "What do we know what the lesson is?" "Compassion, empathy, and the opposite of arrogance." "Humility?" "Yep." "Have you ever thought about going back in time?" "Of course. Not then, though. No anesthesia. It would make my job horrible." "You wouldn't have your job. There were still bleeding people back then," Grams continued as if she hadn't heard. "I could never let anyone put a leech on me or cut me open to let me bleed because I had pneumonia. It happened to George Washington. They bled him." "It must have been his time anyway." "Probably. The bleeding didn't help." Graham stood. The energy of her argument propelled her to the kitchen with the dishes. Olivia followed. "It doesn't matter. We can't go back in time with Max." Grams looked up from the dishwasher. "No, we can't." "I invited him to go with us in the morning. I assume he agreed?" "Yep, so we'll have to pick him up." "Well, then, I'm off to bed. We can discuss this further with him tomorrow afternoon." Olivia stood in front of the long mirror on the back of her door. She had no illusions. The only thing she had going for her was the fact that she had not gotten fat. Flat stomach? Yep. Thin hair? Yep. Thin lips? Yep. Hawk-like nose? Yep. Large, round eyes instead of sexy almond-shaped eyes? Yep. Too nerdy for classmates to get her sense of humor? Yep. Walk with a limp forever? Yep. And yet, Max wanted to dance with her in a crimson dress. Of course, she was the only person he knew in this century. If he got to stay here, that would change, quicker than she could fathom. Of course, he had told Honey what she could do with her proposition, in the name of friendship. Technically, he could be in love with someone else and still be her friend. Technically. That didn't mean she could be his. She flopped down on her bed, eyes to the off-white swirls of the ceiling. He would go back to 1769, and none of this would matter anyway. She might as well enjoy his company and friendship while she could. Surely, no harm would come to her by being his friend. In the morning, they chose the SUV. Grams rode shotgun. Olivia pulled up in front of the Ballard house. Max waited, Bible in hand. "I was hoping we'd be early enough to see the conservatory," Grams said softly. "Good morning," Olivia offered as Max took a seat in the back. "Large wagon. We thought it would be more comfortable." "Aye, 'tis." Max laid his Bible in the seat next to him. "Plenty of room to spread out. I like a large carriage. Takes big horse flesh, though. This is more convenient." Olivia grinned, glad she'd been able to please him. "We have to go back over the bridge." "Where is this church?" "Cornerstone Church, not far from Gloucester Point." "So you're a pair of dissenters?" Grams bristled in her seat. "The Church of England is no longer the Church of the Colony or State now," Olivia offered. "Well, that's a blessing." Olivia glanced at him in the rearview mirror. Max picked up his Bible once more and placed it in his lap. "The more I read, the more I wonder at any faction thinking they have all the answers." "I agree," Grams turned. "We fellowship here because it's the only one Olivia and I have found that agrees with most of what we understand." "What don't you agree with?" "They think Jesus only drank grape juice." Max released a chuckle. Olivia found a parking place in the small lot. "After church, we usually go for brunch. Would you care to join us today?" Grams offered as she extracted herself from the seatbelt. Max beat her to the door and handed her down. "I would be delighted, ma'am." Olivia hopped out before Max could arrive at her door. He offered his arm to Grams. Garrett waved from the usual pew and stepped out into the aisle. Max handed Grams into the long bench first, then stepped in to take a seat next to her. Olivia slipped in next to Max, and Garrett sat next to her. Olivia felt Max stiffen before taking a glance around her to Garrett. Pastor Tim bustled to the front to make his good mornings. Olivia placed her hand on Max's arm before he could stand, causing a swirl of tingles winding their way through areas she wasn't supposed to acknowledge in church. She found herself more distracted when it was time to sing. An unaccountable shortage of hymnals in front of them required her to share with Garrett. It was embarrassing to be jealous of her grandmother for having the chance to share a hymnal with Max. Max kept his eyes on the pastor as he gave the sermon. On what? Olivia would have to ask Grams later. They sang another hymn, and then they could leave. Olivia sent a prayer asking for forgiveness for her distraction as she followed Max and Grams down the aisle to the parking lot. Garrett, barely a pace behind, whispered, "Who is that guy?" "He's the man I'm going to marry." Max, with Grams in tow, waited for them on the asphalt. Garrett slipped a step or two faster and reached them just before Olivia. "Max." Max stuck out his hand. Garrett stood a fraction taller and shook his hand. "Garrett." Olivia walked between the tension of the two men. She had not seen Garrett behave this way before. Of course, for years, Grams insinuated that she should marry Garrett. She seemed to believe that one day, Olivia would wake up and see what had been there all along. That she was in love with Garrett, and he with her. This was the first time she had ever seen any evidence that Graham might be right about Garrett. Olivia, on the other hand, had never been further away from Garrett in that far from likely eventuality. "Max, Garrett is an old friend from school." Olivia turned to Garrett. "This is our new friend Max, from Yorktown." Max arranged himself to stand between Grams and Olivia. Garrett turned his gaze to Grams. "Same place?" Yes, Grams replied before Olivia could respond. I'll follow you. Max handed Grams back into the truck while Olivia gained her seat behind the wheel. The topic of the sermon had been thankfulness. Grams and Max discussed thankfulness all the way to the pub. Grams sat next to Olivia, leaving Max and Garrett across from them at the table. She couldn't help but compare the two. The latter, a longtime friend, had seen her through the tough time of her accident, not to mention college and grad school. But next to Max, he was too thin, like he had not filled out to manhood. A boy sitting next to a powerful man, though they couldn't be too far apart in age. What you having, hun? Startled, Olivia looked down at her menu, getting a wink from Max as she glanced down. Had he guessed her thoughts, or was he just teasing? So, Max, what kind of work do you do? Garrett's question sounded like Torquemada rubbing his hands before a particularly interesting inquisition. I'm a musician. Where do you play? Here and there. I'm new to this area. He sent another wink to Olivia. What's your instrument? Violin, pianoforte, although I'll give any instrument a try. Is that how you and Olivia met? No, we met at Ballad House in Yorktown. Olivia's temper flared. Why would you think we met at work? Did he think Max had a screw loose or something? Well, you're a music therapist. I just thought it made sense. We met at Ballard House, as Max said. She turned towards Max. Garrett is a computer scientist. When Max looked puzzled, she added, he builds the little gadgets that make the world as we know it run. It sure beats the family business. What's the family business? Mortuary, Garrett shivered. Undertakers? Yes. Been in my family for generations. It's not for me. Garrett kept his gaze down at his coffee. Guilt squeezed Olivia's midsection. She had wanted the inquisition of Max to stop, but she had not meant to embarrass Garrett. My family are merchants. They own a string of stores in Norfolk, Williamsburg, Richmond. They all wanted me to join them, open up another shop in Fredericksburg, extend our reach. Olivia quieted. There was so much she didn't know about Max. You didn't want to? She asked. No, I wanted to compose, perform my songs. Garrett stopped swirling spilled sugar crystals on the table. How did you get your way out of it? I didn't. I figured out a way to help them and compose too. I was getting ready to move to Fredericksburg when... Biscuits and gravy? A plate clattered in front of Grams. Once they had been served, Grams blessed the food. So how did Fredericksburg go? Garrett scooped a pile of hash browns into his mouth. Maybe you could help your family with their computer systems. Olivia and Garrett had gone over this many times before, but this was the first time she saw a clear way forward. Garrett turned thoughtful eyes to her. Maybe. My dad would see right through it, though. Probably, but it seems like a good compromise to me. Then you could see them once in a while. Are you estranged from your family? Max asked. Not estranged, but I haven't seen them in a while. You only have one life and one set of parents. Cherish them while they are here. Trust me, you'll miss them when they're gone. Olivia couldn't stop the mist from pooling in her eyes. Max, intent on Garrett, gave her only a profile. Grams moved a little closer. They didn't linger over coffee and the sermon, as been their custom. Clever Grams picked up the bill for everyone, most likely to cover Max's lack of proper funds. One could hardly gainsay the matriarch. Max followed Garrett's lead in a gracious thank you. Garrett escorted Grams to the vehicle, which left Max for Olivia. He offered his arm, and she took it. That was very kind of you. I wish someone had mentored me sooner. There were a lot of hard feelings before we came up with a compromise. Did it take a long time to see the solution? No, just a knock on ahead from my dear mama. And I suspect if Garrett comes up with a reasonable compromise, he'll find his mama ready to knock a head or two so she can keep her family together. I thought we could drop Grams off first and then I'll bring you home. I thought we could bring me to see the conservatory. Grams' ears, like a hound dog's nose, didn't miss a whisper. Max grinned. I don't see why not. Unless it isn't there. If it's not, then it solves my problem.